Chapter 1. The Unexpected Encounter. Zarin Station was a marvel of galactic engineering. It floated between star systems like a gleaming jewel, bustling with interstellar travelers from all corners of the known universe. The station was renowned as a neutral ground where species of all kinds could come together, some to trade, others to negotiate alliances, and many to simply experience the wonder of a universe bigger than their home planets. Zarin's corridors were wide, lined with holographic displays of shimmering constellations and maps detailing trade routes and star charts. Ella Sanchez, a human engineer, had been stationed on Zarin for the better part of a year. The isolation could be lonely, but the work was endlessly fascinating. Every day, she had the opportunity to work on machinery from dozens of different species, learning about technologies and mechanical processes far beyond what she'd known on Earth. Her knowledge of interspecies technology made her highly respected among the station's staff and regular visitors, who knew that if their ships needed repair, Ella was the person to seek out. Her work had even earned her the nickname, the human with the magic hands. But today, Ella had more on her mind than work. Her husband, Commander Gabriel Sanchez, was coming to visit. A highly decorated officer in the Interstellar Command, Gabriel had been posted on distant missions for the last several months. It had been difficult, but they had endured the separation, staying connected through video calls and messages. This time, however, they would finally get to see each other in person. Ella had counted down the days, waiting eagerly to surprise him at the docking bay when he arrived. As she made her way through the central corridor to the docking bay, Ella's thoughts were a million miles away. She barely noticed the bustling crowd around her, the alien languages filling the air, and the occasional glances thrown her way by those who recognized her. She was thinking of Gabriel, of his familiar smile, and the warmth of his embrace, so she didn't see the massive figure that stepped directly into her path. Her shoulder brushed against a tall, heavily built Corvan Malay member of a warrior race known for their brute strength and fierce tempers. The Corvan, his skin a shade of deep red and his four eyes glittering with irritation, glared down at her. "Watch where you're going, human," he growled, his voice a low, menacing rumble that echoed through the corridor. Ella looked up, startled, her train of thought interrupted. She immediately recognized him as a Corvan species renowned for their physical strength and notorious tempers. The Corvans were a proud people, and while they valued honor, they also had a reputation for using their physical might to resolve disputes. In their culture, dominance was everything, and they rarely tolerated what they perceived as disrespect. "I'm sorry," Ella stammered, raising her hands in a placating gesture. "It was an accident. I didn't see you there." But the Corvan, whose name she would later learn was Tharnak, didn't seem interested in apologies. He took her response as weakness, a common misconception among those unfamiliar with human customs. In his eyes, her apology was a sign that she lacked the courage to stand up to him, a fatal misjudgment, as he would soon discover. Before she could say anything else, Tharnak's lips twisted into a sneer. His fist shot out in a blur, landing squarely on Ella's shoulder and sending her sprawling against the metal wall of the corridor. Pain radiated through her side, the impact jarring her bones and leaving her momentarily breathless. The crowd around them fell silent, stunned by the suddenness of the attack. Ella slumped against the wall, wincing as she pressed a hand to her throbbing shoulder. She was no stranger to minor injuries. Being an engineer came with its share of cuts and bruises, but this was different. This was an attack, unprovoked and uncalled for. The shock of it left her stunned, but even as she struggled to gather herself, a flicker of anger began to simmer within her. She wasn't just any engineer on Zarin Station. She was the wife of Commander Gabriel Sanchez. Unbeknownst to Tharnak, Gabriel had earned a reputation across the galaxy as a tactical genius and a formidable warrior in his own right. His presence often struck fear into the hearts of those who would challenge him or anyone under his protection. Ella never used her husband's status as a shield. She was more than capable of handling herself, but there were times, like now, when his reputation could serve as a powerful deterrent. Before she could say anything, the station's intercom crackled to life, and a voice echoed through the corridor, clear and authoritative. "Commander Gabriel Sanchez, report to the docking bay. Immediate response required." The announcement sent a ripple through the crowd. Heads turned, and whispered conversations began, spreading like wildfire. People glanced at Ella, then at Tharnak and back again. Realizing the significance of what had just happened, Gabriel Sanchez was not only well-known but also highly respected, his name alone often enough to keep potential troublemakers in check. Rumors of his achievements, his strength, and his unwavering loyalty had made him a figure of legend on Zarin Station. Tharnak's expression faltered. He had not expected this. As he looked down at Ella, who was now straightening up with a defiant look in her eyes, he began to sense the gravity of his mistake. He had struck a human without provocation and action that could carry severe consequences on a station like Zarin. And worse still, he had attacked the wife of a man who was known to be one of the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. As the murmurs around them grew louder, Tharnak's bravado began to waver. He clenched his fists, glancing around as if hoping someone might intervene on his behalf. But the onlookers were now whispering amongst themselves, speculating on how Commander Sanchez would react. Ella straightened, the pain in her shoulder dulling as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She met Tharnak's gaze, her eyes steady and unyielding. "You may have just made the worst decision of your life," she said, her voice low but carrying a quiet strength that even the Corvin couldn't ignore. Before Tharnak could respond, the doors at the far end of the corridor slid open, and Gabriel Sanchez entered the room. His presence was unmistakable, commanding attention without a word. Dressed in his dark blue command uniform, he moved with a quiet, controlled energy that spoke of countless battles fought and won. His gaze swept over the scene, taking in Ella's disheveled appearance and the Corvin standing opposite her, his posture tense and defensive. The crowd parted, creating a path for him, and he walked forward with a calm, purposeful stride. His expression was unreadable, but those who knew him understood that beneath his composed exterior, a storm was brewing. He stopped in front of Ella, his gaze softening briefly as he reached out to touch her shoulder gently. "Are you all right, Ella?" he asked, his voice a low murmur that only she could hear. Ella nodded, managing a faint smile despite the pain. "I'm fine, just a bit shaken." Gabriel's jaw tightened as he turned his attention back to Tharnak, his eyes now cold and unyielding. The Corvin, who had previously exuded confidence and strength, shifted uneasily, as if sensing the danger that now loomed over him. "You attacked my wife," Gabriel said, his tone deceptively calm, "on a station that prides itself on maintaining peace between species. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Tharnak swallowed, his earlier arrogance replaced by a palpable fear. He stammered, struggling to find words. I didn't know she was your wife, Commander. It was an accident." Gabriel's gaze didn't waver. "Whether you knew or not is irrelevant. You violated the station's protocols, and you attacked a human without provocation. That alone requires atonement." The crowd watched, holding its collective breath, as Gabriel stood before Tharnak, a figure of calm authority in the face of the Corvin's crumbling bravado. Chapter 2. The Arrival of the Husband. Gabriel's cold, unwavering gaze remained fixed on Tharnak. The intensity of his stare was enough to make even the most hardened warriors uneasy, and Tharnak was no exception. The Corvin was renowned in his own right, a fierce warrior with a track record of victories in his home sector. But even he couldn't deny the chill that crept down his spine as he faced the silent fury of Commander Gabriel Sanchez. Silence settled over the corridor as the crowd watched, captivated by the confrontation. This wasn't just about a fight. It was a clash of reputations, a collision of two powerful figures with honor on the line. And on a station like Zarin, where respect and reputation held as much weight as any law, the stakes were higher than they seemed. Gabriel took a step closer to Tharnak, his voice low and deliberate. "Attacking civilians is a serious offense here, Tharnak. If you were anyone else, security would have dragged you to a holding cell by now." Tharnak's jaw clenched. The mention of security was a veiled threat, and he knew it. The station's guards were known for their impartiality, and they would show him no mercy if they had reason to act. But the Corvin warrior still had his pride, and his reputation meant everything to him. He couldn't simply apologize and walk away. His honor would be tarnished. Tharnak lifted his chin defiantly, his deep-set eyes glinting with a flicker of his former arrogance. "I acted out of instinct. Your wife was in my way, and I have a right to defend my space," he said, his voice steady, though a hint of nervousness betrayed him. Gabriel's expression didn't change, but Ella could see the subtle tightening of his fists. He was a man who valued discipline and respect, and Tharnak's refusal to take responsibility was grating on him. Ella reached out, touching his arm lightly in a silent reminder to keep his calm, but she knew this was a matter of principle for Gabriel. "You misunderstand me," Gabriel replied, his tone as sharp as a blade. "Your actions weren't just a breach of station law. They were an offense against my family, and that cannot go unanswered." Tharnak's bravado faltered for a moment, but he quickly masked it. "What do you propose then, Commander?" he asked, crossing his arms in an attempt to project confidence. "A duel," Gabriel said without hesitation. His words hung in the air, electrifying the atmosphere. "One-on-one, in zero-gravity conditions. If you win, we'll consider this matter closed. But if I win, you'll publicly apologize to my wife and swear to uphold Zaren's laws from this point on." Ella's eyes widened slightly. While she trusted Gabriel's abilities, the proposal took her by surprise. Zero-gravity duels were notoriously difficult and dangerous, requiring agility, strategy, and nerves of steel. They were held only for the gravest of disputes, as they carried an inherent risk of serious injury. Tharnak's lips curled into a sneer, a flicker of his earlier arrogance returning. "Fine," he said, his voice laced with disdain. "If you wish to humiliate yourself, Commander, I'll grant you the honor." Gabriel didn't react to the insult. He simply turned to one of the station officials who had gathered nearby. "Arrange for a duel room," he said calmly. The official nodded, quickly contacting security to make the necessary arrangements. As the preparations were made, Ella felt a mixture of pride and worry. She knew Gabriel could hold his own, but the stakes were high, and Tharnak was not a warrior to be underestimated. The Corvins were known for their raw power and tenacity in combat, and their natural strength gave them a significant advantage in a zero-gravity environment. Before Gabriel left to prepare, he turned to Ella, his gaze softening. "I'll be fine," he assured her, as if reading the concern in her eyes. Ella nodded, giving him a small smile. "Just don't let him catch you off guard. He's strong, but I know you're smarter." He chuckled softly, his confidence unshaken. "Trust me, Ella. This won't take long." Chapter 3. A Duel in the Stars. The anticipation was palpable as word of the duel spread through Zaren's station like wildfire. Zaren's inhabitants and travelers, hailing from dozens of star systems, were no strangers to interspecies disputes. However, duels were a rare and thrilling event, especially one involving a highly respected human commander and a notorious Corvin warrior. The tension mounted as spectators gathered in the observation deck surrounding the zero-gravity chamber. Hushed voices murmured in a mix of excitement and disbelief, and various alien languages echoed through the chamber as species with wildly different anatomies and customs clustered together, united by their curiosity. Inside the duel chamber, Gabriel and Tharnak floated in the zero-gravity environment, facing each other across a distance that felt charged with animosity. The chamber was a spherical space lined with reinforced alloy panels designed to absorb impact, and it had a complex array of sensors embedded in the walls to record and display each movement to the audience. Holographic projectors displayed a real-time view of the combatants to the crowd, making every feint, every strike, and every dodge appear larger than life. As they awaited the signal to start, Tharnak's expression was one of contempt mixed with simmering rage. The Corvin warrior was tall, his bulky frame adorned with tribal marks that reflected his status within his species. Corvins valued physical dominance and believed in a hierarchy of strength, and in Tharnak's mind, this human, no matter his reputation, was an inferior challenger. Tharnak's four eyes glinted with confidence as he raised his fists, flexing his kinetic gloves, which emitted a soft hum as they powered up. Gabriel, on the other hand, maintained a calm, focused expression. His stance was relaxed but alert, his eyes keenly observing every movement Tharnak made. Gabriel's kinetic gloves were custom-built, a product of his years in command and familiarity with alien technologies. Though outwardly unassuming, they were finely calibrated for maximum efficiency in combat, with adjustments for power modulation that allowed Gabriel to control the strength of each strike with extreme precision. He knew that brute strength alone wouldn't be enough to bring down Tharnak. This was going to be a battle of skill and strategy, one he intended to win with calculated moves and perfect timing. The holographic countdown began, visible in both the chamber and on the observation deck, marking the seconds before the duel commenced. The crowd leaned in, the diverse collection of aliens and humans holding their collective breath, waiting to see how the battle would unfold. 3, 2, 1. The signal sounded, and Tharnak moved first, launching himself toward Gabriel with a speed that belied his massive frame. In the zero-gravity environment, every motion carried momentum that would be difficult to stop, and Tharnak intended to use this to his advantage. He swung a powerful fist at Gabriel, his kinetic glove glowing as it built up energy for a devastating blow. Gabriel, however, anticipated the move. He twisted his body gracefully, allowing Tharnak's punch to pass by harmlessly, his momentum sending the Corvin forward in an uncontrolled trajectory. Using the slight twist of his waist, Gabriel countered with a jab to Tharnak's ribs, his kinetic glove delivering a precise, concentrated pulse of force. The strike reverberated through Tharnak's body, pushing him off course and sending him spiraling into the chamber wall. The impact stunned him momentarily, and the crowd gasped in awe, realizing that Gabriel's speed and control in zero gravity were a match for Tharnak's brute strength. Tharnak's face twisted in anger as he regained his composure. He bared his sharp teeth, his 4 eyes blazing with fury. This was not the outcome he had expected, and his pride as a Corvin was now at stake. He pushed off the wall with a powerful kick, propelling himself back toward Gabriel with even greater speed. This time, he abandoned any pretense of strategy, relying instead on sheer force as he swung both fists in an attempt to overwhelm his opponent. Gabriel analyzed Tharnak's movements in an instant, noting the Corvin's tendency to overcommit to his strikes. It was a flaw he could exploit. As Tharnak closed in, Gabriel waited until the last possible moment before dodging to the side, evading the attack with a graceful spin. Tharnak's fists met empty air, his momentum once again sending him hurtling past Gabriel. Using Tharnak's own speed against him, Gabriel extended his leg in a sweeping kick, connecting with the back of Tharnak's knee and sending him tumbling forward in an uncontrolled spin. The audience watched in astonishment as Gabriel demonstrated his mastery of zero-gravity combat. To the untrained eye, his movements appeared almost effortless, but each dodge, strike, and counter was calculated with precision. Unlike Tharnak, who relied on raw power, Gabriel was using the environment to his advantage, conserving his energy while keeping his opponent off balance. Frustration mounting, Tharnak steadied himself, his breathing heavy and erratic. He knew he was being outmaneuvered, and his patience was wearing thin. Determined to land a hit, he pushed off once more, this time launching himself at Gabriel with a wild, two-handed swing. The force behind the blow would have been devastating if it connected, but Gabriel's keen awareness of Tharnak's patterns allowed him to predict the attack. Instead of dodging, Gabriel caught Tharnak's wrist with his gloved hand, using the Corvin's momentum to pivot and redirect his trajectory. With a swift, calculated twist, Gabriel flipped Tharnak over his shoulder, sending him crashing into the chamber wall once again. This time, the impact was harder, and Tharnak's body recoiled from the force, leaving him dazed and disoriented. The crowd erupted in cheers and gasps, marveling at Gabriel's display of skill. Even some of Tharnak's Corvin compatriots in the audience seemed impressed, exchanging nods of grudging respect for the human commander. For them, it was clear. Gabriel Sanchez was no ordinary opponent. His calm demeanor, precise movements, and ability to anticipate Tharnak's attacks made him a formidable adversary in the zero-gravity environment. Gabriel took a moment to steady himself, maintaining his focus despite the cheers from the crowd. He could see that Tharnak was nearing his limit, his pride and anger now visibly warring with exhaustion and frustration. Gabriel decided it was time to end the duel. Tharnak, still disoriented from the last impact, pushed off the wall one final time, his movements slower and less controlled than before. He attempted a clumsy swing, but Gabriel sidestepped it effortlessly, delivering a swift, powerful punch to Tharnak's shoulder. The kinetic energy from Gabriel's glove reverberated through Tharnak's body, knocking him backward and leaving him floating, defenseless, in the center of the chamber. Hovering just a few feet away, Gabriel locked eyes with Tharnak, his expression one of calm authority. "Yield, Tharnak," he said, his voice carrying a quiet, unmistakable authority. "This is over." For a moment, Tharnak's pride held him back. His jaw clenched as he considered the humiliation of surrendering in front of his peers. But the exhaustion in his body, the pain radiating from his bruises, and the unwavering confidence in Gabriel's gaze left him with little choice. He knew he had been outmatched, not just physically but mentally. With a reluctant nod, he muttered, "I yield." A moment of silence passed before the crowd erupted in applause and cheers, a chorus of admiration for Gabriel's skill and composure. Even those who had been rooting for Tharnak found themselves applauding, recognizing the undeniable prowess Gabriel had displayed. As the duel chamber opened, Gabriel floated out, greeted by a wave of applause from the crowd gathered on the observation deck. He barely acknowledged the noise, his focus solely on Ella, who stood waiting for him with a look of pride and relief on her face. She stepped forward as he approached, her eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and concern. "That was incredible," Ella said, her voice barely above a whisper, though the admiration in her tone was clear. "You didn't even break a sweat?" Gabriel gave her a small smile, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I told you, Ella, it was nothing I couldn't handle." As they walked away from the crowd, whispers and murmurs followed them, the story of the duel already spreading like wildfire through Zarin Station. Gabriel's victory was more than just a personal achievement, was a powerful statement that respect and skill held as much weight as strength, a lesson that resonated deeply with those who had witnessed the duel. In the days that followed, Tharnak would publicly apologize to Ella, fulfilling the terms of the duel, and Gabriel's reputation on Zarin Station would grow even stronger. But for Gabriel and Ella, the moment meant something more profound, a reminder of the strength they drew from each other, and the unbreakable bond that united them even in the vastness of space. Chapter 4. A New Respect. The days following the duel were a blur of whispers and sideways glances for Tharnak as he moved through Zarin Station. His pride bruised, the Corvin found himself the subject of stares not of admiration but of quiet ridicule from other station residents. And in the station's unspoken hierarchy of respect and reputation, Tharnak's defeat at the hands of a human was no small blemish. His Corvin brethren, known for their unyielding pride, saw his failure as a sign of weakness. Among the Corvin, respect was paramount, and the loss of it was a heavy burden to bear. Meanwhile, Gabriel's name had become legendary across the station, spreading far beyond those who had witnessed the duel. Tales of his calm yet fierce approach, his skillful handling of the zero-gravity chamber, and his unwavering dedication to his wife were recounted with awe. The crowd's excitement hadn't diminished in the days since the duel, and many residents sought him out, hoping for even a brief conversation or a glimpse of the commander. For Ella, the experience was transformative. Although she'd always been known and respected as a skilled engineer, her connection to Gabriel now added an aura of reverence to her presence on the station. Crew members and travelers alike would approach her in the corridors, congratulating her and expressing admiration for her husband's bravery. Some even asked her to relay messages of respect to Gabriel, and Ella found herself smiling more than ever, proud not only of Gabriel's prowess but of the strength they shared as a couple. The day of Tharnak's formal apology arrived, a ceremonial event that had drawn quite the audience. Word had circulated quickly, and as a result, the station's main hall was packed with onlookers, each curious to witness the humbled warrior's act of atonement. Gabriel and Ella stood at the front of the hall, their expressions serene as they awaited Tharnak's arrival. Gabriel wore his formal uniform, a dark blue suit adorned with the insignia of his rank, while Ella, though dressed simply, exuded an unshakable calm. Tharnak entered the hall, flanked by two other Corvin warriors, their faces unreadable, but their presence meant to lend him a small measure of dignity. Tharnak's usual swagger was noticeably absent, replaced by a somber demeanor as he approached Gabriel and Ella. His four eyes, which had once glared at Ella with disdain, now avoided hers, his gaze focused on the floor as he stopped a respectful distance from the couple. Clearing his throat, Tharnak spoke, his deep voice echoing through the silent hall. "Commander Sanchez, Ella Sanchez?" He paused, his pride clearly warring with his obligation. I apologize for my actions. I acted without honor, and in doing so, I disrespected both the laws of this station and the reputation of your family." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, and Gabriel nodded, his expression neutral but his eyes carrying a hint of satisfaction. Tharnak's apology wasn't just words. It was a public acknowledgement of Gabriel's strength and Ella's integrity, a recognition that the station's human residents were deserving of respect. Ella stepped forward, her gaze steady as she addressed Tharnak. "Apology accepted, Tharnak," she said, her voice clear and calm. "We all have our moments of misjudgment, and it takes courage to admit when we're wrong." Tharnak nodded, visibly relieved as the weight of his guilt lifted. For all his pride, he valued honor, and Ella's gracious acceptance of his apology helped him to salvage a portion of it. In his own way, he had come to respect her and Gabriel, though he would never admit it openly. As Tharnak retreated, the crowd began to disperse, but not before a few station officials approached Gabriel and Ella, offering words of gratitude and admiration. The duel had served as a reminder to all aboard Zarin Station that respect was a universal language, transcending species and traditions. Gabriel's calm authority, combined with Ella's gracious forgiveness, had set a new standard for diplomacy and mutual respect on the station. Once the ceremony concluded, Gabriel and Ella walked together through the corridor, the remnants of the crowd watching them with admiration. They remained silent for a few moments, savoring the calm after the storm of recent days. Ella leaned into Gabriel's side, resting her head on his shoulder as they strolled down the familiar corridors. "That was intense," Ella murmured, a slight smile playing on her lips. "I think you made quite an impression." Gabriel chuckled, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. "I'd rather not make a habit of it, to be honest. But if it means people will think twice before starting trouble with you, then it was worth it." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with warmth. "You know, I could have handled it myself. I may not have your strength, but I have a few tricks up my sleeve." He smiled, nodding. "I know, Ella. You're stronger than you think. But protecting you, that's something I'll always do, whether or not you need it." They stopped for a moment, watching as the distant stars glimmered through the station's observation windows. In the vastness of space, where uncertainty and danger were constants, their bond felt like a beacon, a steady, unbreakable force that transcended any physical distance or cultural boundary. As they resumed walking, Gabriel's thoughts drifted to the future. He knew that his duties would inevitably take him far from Zarin Station again, pulling him back into the dangers and uncertainties of his command. But he also knew that no matter where his path led, he would always return to Ella, drawn by the quiet strength and love that anchored him in a universe that sometimes felt impossibly vast. They reached their quarters, and as the door slid shut behind them, Ella turned to Gabriel, her expression thoughtful. "So, what happens now?" Gabriel shrugged, a playful glint in his eyes. Now, we enjoy the time we have before duty calls us away again." She smiled, nodding as she took his hand and led him to the small window that overlooked the stars. They stood together, silently watching the beauty of the cosmos, each lost in their own thoughts but connected by a shared understanding. The challenges they faced, the dangers that lurked in the unknown, they all seemed insignificant in that moment, dwarfed by the quiet strength they found in each other. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, oblivious to the lives unfolding within the metal walls of Zarin Station. But for Gabriel and Ella, this was their universe, a place where love, respect, and shared strength could bridge any distance and conquer any fear. And as they held each other close, both knew that no matter what awaited them beyond the station's boundaries, they would face it together, stronger for having endured this trial. The legend of the duel would live on in the station's history, but to them, it was just another chapter in a story that was far from over.